Hello, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to this Innovator webinar. We have a very exciting show today. So today we're discussing the future of financial privacy, why privacy-preserving blockchains matter. No pun intended. So welcome to this webinar. Very excited to be joined with Howard Wu, founder and CEO of Aleo, Rob Viglione, founder of zkVerify, and Omar Azhar, VP, Head of Business Development at ZKsync. So we'll explore why privacy-preserving blockchains are becoming a critical piece of infrastructure for both institutional and retail users. So we'll look at both sides of the story. We'll look at into the latest zero knowledge or ZK breakthroughs that are powering this shift and what the regulatory path forward is. Just before we get started, as always, all the information contained in this webinar is for informational purposes only and is not intended as financial or investment advice. And so without further ado, let's get started. Let's dive into it. Let's start with our panelists, and whoever wants to get started, each of you, could you please introduce yourself, give a very quick overview of your organization, your goals regarding the investment of ZK proof technology and privacy-preserving blockchain. Rob, I saw a little smile.
Yeah, I was going to ask who wants to. Yeah, sure, I'll go. Hey, everyone, I'm Rob Viglione. I'm the CEO of Horizon Labs. zkVerify is our latest product that we're launching very soon. I won't give you the exact launch date, but it's about to get out there. I will say from the point of view of, it's kind of interesting as we're going through the intros here, you've got our product, zkVerify, you've got Omar at ZKsync. I think one day ZK will probably be no longer in the names of companies and products because ZK will be just embedded in everything that we do in blockchain. So really excited for this conversation that we're about to have. I've sat on a couple panels with these guys before. I think it's gonna be pretty cool.
Cool. I can go next. Hey everyone, Sacha, thanks for having me here. So Omar Azhar, VP Business Development at ZKsync. We have been building in ZK on Ethereum as a layer 2 scaling solution since 2017. We were the first ZK rollup to launch with ZKsync Lite, I think back in 2021. And we launched the first ZK EVM layer 2 as well, ZKsync Era. And now what we're doing is we're essentially taking our technology and giving the ability for institutions, enterprises to start building their own fully customized ZK layer 2 solution with privacy and connected to Ethereum. And this is what we call Prividiums.
Hi, my name is Howard. I'm the founder of Aleo. Aleo is a layer 1 blockchain using zero-knowledge proofs to enable privacy and compliance. I think at its core, one of the key hallmarks of this architecture is that we're the first ZKL1 to support private smart contracts in the market today. We're live, we're available. We launched about almost a year ago in September of last year. And so we've been out there in the ecosystem building and expanding our reach.
Great. So, well, let's get into it, and let's start with you since let's double click on that, Howard. So we'll first look into more institutional applications. And so, Howard, you mentioned Aleo mainnet launch last year, and it's enabling off-chain private computation with on-chain verification. Could you give us some insight into how institutions are currently interacting with the Aleo network and why they're doing so?
Yeah, we've definitely been seeing growing institutional interest across the board. And many of the partners that we have conversations with see Aleo as one of the missing infrastructure layers. Like in the past 6 months, we've had hundreds of conversations with major players, and almost everyone we talk to has been looking for some privacy preserving component in their stack. One of the main things that I think has really transcended from those conversations is the reality that the user journey for money requires some degree of privacy, whether it be for business risk reasons, whether it be for risk reasons or compliance reasons, or just regulatory requirements as well. And so that's something that I think just people have not really recognized yet. Also, amongst many conversations where we have with law enforcement, they tend to assume that cryptocurrencies, generally speaking, are private and encrypted, and we almost have to kind of break the veil for them and let them realize that no, this stuff is actually very pseudonymous, and you can actually track and trace it very, very easily. And it has sometimes you really want that, but other times it actually breaks the fundamental goal of your business. And so for us, a big part of our efforts have been educating institutions on this exact topic, to show them, what the future lies with ZK now in the picture.
And then next, Omar, you mentioned ZKsync unveiled like the Prevedium's privacy-focused layer 2s designed for treasury settlements and asset tokenization, right? So what kind of solutions do those Prevediums provide to institutional users? And can you tell us a bit more about the anchoring mechanism to Ethereum to help with auditability?
Sure. Yeah. So I guess what I'll start with is a little bit of the problem statement that we're really looking to solve. So public blockchains that are permissionless, like such as Bitcoin and Ethereum, the main solution that they're bringing to the market and the main disruption that they're bringing is that they're automating trust at the end of the day. They're creating value networks where trust is more or less automated, it's fully built in the system. There's no trust intermediaries or party. That is where a lot of the verifiability comes in. That's where the hard finality comes in. And that also creates, and then they also have nice composability aspects with Ethereum, for example. It's smart contracts that are composable with each other. We've also in parallel, we've seen private enterprise blockchain solutions as well, right? And this really hits on the other side of the requirements for most institutions where they need control, they need privacy, they need confidentiality, they need to be able to implement different types of regulations and compliance. They can't just be operating in a public blockchain world. So there's been this dichotomy of these two worlds of blockchains getting built up for almost nearly a decade at this point. What we are trying to do is essentially merge them and give enterprises the ability to actually access and use the trust automation from blockchains such as Ethereum for verifiability, but still let them have their own private execution environment through their own custom private ZK layer 2. And this is what Prevediums provides. You fully get role-based access. It's also the other aspect of that. It's privacy in a pragmatic approach. What we have done essentially is because the entire chain is verified by ZK, the institution essentially owns the data. They control who can see it. It's role-based access control. So they get all the nice properties that they would want to implement in their own execution environment through their own layer 2. But at the same time, they're anchored to Ethereum. So that verifies that everything they're doing is fully correct. The nice thing that then brings up is that we also have native interoperability. And eventually this native interoperability will also be fully private. So you can start expanding into use cases where institutions aren't just operating in silos anymore. They're both connected to Ethereum, can interact with the Ethereum ecosystem, but now they can also interact with their counterparties who might be running their own private chains. And this will be supplied to native interoperability. So a lot of common use cases currently that are being used by financial institutions for blockchain that right now is not on the public blockchains would be things such as intraday repo, tokenized deposits, cash and liquidity management as well. So now you can start thinking of actually building that on top of Ethereum. And that's really what Prevediums is trying to solve for.
Super interesting. And as everything, right, having the verification process has some sort of cost, and verification costs for ZK rollups were estimated at around $47 million, I think, in 2023. So how much has that grown since, Rob? Do you have any insights into how much that's grown? And how are you guys dedicated at zkVerify to lower those costs for users?
Yeah, so I think, Sacha, cost of the actual gas of a transaction, so it varies a lot, and it depends on what proof system you're using, on what piece of infrastructure, whether you're doing it on Ethereum or Aleo, for instance. But it's also a cost for developers. It's a cost for developers where I think where the industry has come from in terms of very interesting different pieces of info, again, like different L1s, different L2s, and so forth. The reality is, from a developer's perspective, as they're starting to enable or work with these privacy-enabled technologies and they're generating ZK proofs, depending where they want to operate with their application, they would need to replicate the verification infrastructure on like whatever layer they're working, right? So what we're trying to do is just to make it much easier for developers. So the cost for us is on just ease of use. So verify, kind of a universal verification, components where use our technology, verify once with us, the result goes wherever you need it, and you don't have to worry about deploying and maintaining verifiers on all of the pieces of infrastructure that you want to work on. Now, there's obviously like the very pragmatic, like cost of verification, depending on a proof system, if it's like a Groth16 proof, or if you're working with Starks with like a ZK VM. And those costs vary wildly, right? And some of the more esoteric proof systems that people are starting to use, like some of our customers, like Noir, for instance, verification costs on like popular layers like Ethereum L1 are actually like in the tens of dollars, and in some cases historically been low level hundreds of dollars per proof, which just chops off a part of your demand curve for the product that you're offering and kind of the segment of the market to which you can offer it. So again, for us, it's about like a dedicated verification infrastructure that does nothing but that and is always state of the art in terms of like the most modern proof systems, and a one-stop shop for developers. So you just don't have to worry about all that maintenance and kind of deployments of verifier contracts everywhere you want to go. But I think just in terms of like, if I could just say, the trend of the industry is ultimately like we all need to be interoperable. Like we need to think in terms of abstractions, and we need to think in terms of sort of modularity, so that at the end of the day, the user isn't going to care and have to explain why they chose a piece of infrastructure to deploy on. They just need to think about it in terms of what they're getting for it. And then our job on the builder side and the platform side is really just to make their lives way easier.
Yep. Yeah. And at the end of the day, right, like even institutions, they're building products for users, right? So if you look at users in retail applications, what are the kinds of, and maybe that's a good question for Howard, what are the kinds of consumer-facing dApps, like payments, gaming, identity wallets, DEXs, etc., right, that are gaining traction on Aleo? You've been live for a year. What are, what value do ZK proofs offer on these dApps for retail users?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great topic. There's been a lot of experimentation on Aleo for different types of use cases. We've seen developers are most excited to experiment with different levels of privacy in their smart contracts. And that has led to, I would say, payments as probably the most prominent use case right now, where we're seeing a lot of traction from the market. Everyone's been talking about stablecoins this year. I think things really kicked off early on when there was like Stripe acquiring Bridge, and there's all these different acquisitions from fintechs. And I think that one of the main things is that while everyone is talking about stablecoins, no one is really talking about private stablecoins. And in every conversation that I have had, the topic of privacy has come up, where there's this expectation that if I'm going to run payroll, employees can't just go to a block explorer and see how much their boss makes or how much their colleagues make, right? And that's a user journey that I think has been very much missing in existing crypto. And I would say that in addition to that, we've also seen from other blockchains, they are looking at how to add some level of confidentiality onto their chains. And one of the key challenges, which is something we learned the hard way early on, is that you need an architecture that is private by default in order to enable full privacy from the get-go. I think it's much easier to selectively reveal and selectively disclose information over time, as opposed to trying to put put things back in the can. And it's just not as simple the other way around. So payments has really been an area that we have seen a lot of traction. We did a lot of integrations. For example, recently we just integrated and announced integration with Request Finance. We also just integrated with Revolut, which is one of the neobanks that are out there prominently in Europe. And we're continuing to have more of these types of conversations and integrations along the way. So, I really think this is a vertical that will continue to take rise in the privacy space, because these are institutions and users who care about having privacy in their financial journey.
Yep, and thinking also about products that are making that financial journey a much better experience. Omar, ZKsync just rolled out not single sign-on but smart sign-on the Era testnet, right? So what is this feature about, and what types of problems does it solve for your users?
Yeah, so from the very get-go, we had native account abstraction built in, because we realized many years ago that the current EOA wallet setup and user experience is not really going to work for a lot of different actual mass market applications. So what we've done is actually take smart contract accounts and essentially start building infrastructure both from that serves developers and chain builders, but then also creates a more beautiful, seamless user experience for end users. A good example here, so let's say you're building a chain, like take Abstract Global Wallet, for example. That is completely redefining how you interact with an ecosystem or a chain. They're layered to focus on consumer applications. And the way you interact with it is you essentially have a home page almost, and like your browser window, and that is like your entire ecosystem page. You're not going to individual apps, etc. And it's got a very nice experience where you're essentially just signing on with your email. It's just like a Web2 type user experience and onboarding that everyone's already used to. On the back end of that is something like ZKsync Smart Sign-On, which is giving developers this account management infrastructure for them to build very different types of experiences. Another example is for Xsola, which is a very large gaming fintech with more than 50 million monthly active users. We're right now working with them to essentially expand on Smart Sign-On, so then they can start building a backpack-like experience for their chain, where users essentially are able to onboard. They're able to essentially have their wallets more or less like hidden from them, at least like the current wallet user experience, and they're signing on from their phone or from their desktop, and they're just using biometrics to sign transactions. The other thing that we'll be starting to do is essentially make it a one-stop shop for anyone looking to build the best-in-class user experiences. We already have integrations with things like Privy and Dynamic. And on top of that, you can bring your own wallet, so those will be integrated into it. And then we'll add on all different types of on and off ramping as well. So create essentially one single funnel for anyone trying to build a chain or an application that they can then start moving. So it allows us to move more into the full stack rather than just being the blockchain, and giving developers the tools to build better experiences.
Super relevant, and at the root, like, it's all about building infrastructure for developers to build on top of it, right? And another example of some of that infrastructure, right, moving over to Rob, is zkVerify recently announced the release of the Relayer REST API on beta, right? Can you tell us more about that, and how it can be used for retail and practical applications?
Yeah, I mean, so Sacha, I was going to bring that up, so thank you for doing that. It goes in the same vein of what Omar was just talking about in terms of, like, for us, we're core infrastructure builders. So like our business is just making that infrastructure infinitely easier for people to use. And one way that we're doing that, and we're actually getting a lot of early success on, and again, to frame this all, guys, like ZKsync and Aleo are in production, right? So they're further ahead in terms of actual use cases where we have customers on a testnet. So just to say, like, our early traction on testnet has been pretty phenomenal from the point of view of this Relayer product, where historically it's just harder to, for anyone who's deployed like a verifier contract on Ethereum or some other infrastructure, it can be scary. I mean, obviously there's precedent out there and contracts you can use, but there's a lot of bespoke work that has to happen. So using zkVerify to begin with is a very big step forward. And we have like zkVerify JS for developers to easily integrate. But the Relayer product was taking it to the next level, because developers are very familiar with just using REST APIs. So just having a very simple interface where developers can kind of, again, just abstract away everything else. And importantly, from the retail audience, for like the users of applications they see developers are building, we want to abstract away even the cryptocurrency components. So like for us, like I think that when we have an industry and we try to think where's the industry going in 3 to 5 years, and you've got so many different pieces of infrastructure. If you look at the architecture of Web3, and you have some of that, the infrastructure builders here on this call, all of that needs to be abstracted away. You can have account abstraction, you can have just like login abstraction, like just easier logins. But at the same time, like we shouldn't have to be dealing in 1,000 different tokens and the kind of exchange rate dynamics of those tokens. So for us, in this very simple relayer product for developers and their application users, we abstract away, like number one, super easy to connect to and to use like immediately. Super fast because of the way we built it, we have something baked in there we call optimistic verification. So we get kind of millisecond order verification for the applications. And then just from the ease of use for their users, we don't want them to even worry about cryptocurrency and setting up wallets and so forth. It's the kind of thing where the app dev can just pay us a subscription every month, and we handle all of the cryptocurrency stuff behind the scenes.
Yep, and right. So you're building the infrastructure for developers to build on top, but then in between the institutional adoption, retail adoption, and the builders, there is another layer that we haven't touched on, and that I want to shift gears to, which is regulatory compliance, right? Because that's really what enables to build better, more efficient capital markets with investor protection, better price discovery mechanism, et cetera, right? But it's often seen as going against privacy, right? And people are often seeing, well, if you have privacy, then you can't monitor and you can't know what's going on, which is kind of a little bit ironical, because that's exactly what is as you brought up earlier with public blockchains that actually are pseudonymous but give a lot of transparency, right? So and let's start with you, Howard. So how does Aleo balance that divide between user confidentiality and regulatory compliance? Are these compatible, incompatible? Obviously, I think we know the answer to that, but like, and how do you approach AML and anti-money laundering and KYC regulations?
Yeah, well, this is a topic I could spend all day talking about. I will say that to keep it very concise, before diving into the exact techniques that we have enabled on Aleo, we're uniquely positioned for this conversation in the US. And what I mean by that is that the foundation, as well as our labs company, are both US entities. And this was a decision that we took back when it wasn't a popular decision to be US based. And a big part of our ethos for that was, this idea that we are all US based and we are all building US tech. It was also technology that was funded and research that was funded by the NSF. And so, ultimately for us, a goal has been to really orient the technology where it belongs and where it matters, which is the US. It's a major financial hub of the world, and arguably the most important financial hub for us today. And that's where we have time and time again in our conversations been told, because we are the first ZKL1 to support private smart contracts and to be live with it, that we are kind of leading the way on writing the rule books and the playbooks on this exact topic. And there's 3 areas that we have really been focused on. And the first has been specifically for compliant by design tooling on view keys. We've integrated view keys of every level of granularity throughout the entire stack. And so, while there are some chains that are out there that have integrated account level view keys, meaning you can see all of your transactions, all of your transaction details, we've gone further than that. We've integrated view keys into every transaction, into every transition, into every record of every transition. And so
for our listeners who are not familiar with view keys, could you just give a brief definition of what that is?
Yeah, so in many traditional blockchains, you typically have a private key that derives into your address. In Aleo, you have a private key that derives into your view key, and then your view key derives into your address. The idea of the view key is that when you have an end-to-end encrypted blockchain, all of the data that is public is encrypted. It's ciphertext. And so in order to see your data, you need to use your view key to decrypt your account and therefore see your data in your account. And without the view key, you aren't able to see your account data. And so this is a way that to enable privacy for every user where they effectively own their own data. And I think this is, for us, one of the key hallmarks of an architecture like this is we have a lot of the learnings from the past decade from prior attempts at privacy blockchains to know what worked and what failed. And we've revised and built a better system that is more accommodating to various types of jurisdictions or various types of requirements. The second area is verifiable credentials. So we have an initiative called ZPass, and the idea of ZPass is to allow users to be able to verify their data, their personal data, without having to reveal it. So, for example, I could prove to you that I'm over the age of 18 without giving you my date of birth or all of my other details on my driver's license, like my address and my height and my weight and my eye color and my hair color. So there's all of these types of details that are overly unnecessary. The third area that I would touch upon is policy and rules engine. So this is something that uniquely is enabled because you now have ZK's privacy preserving smart contracts available. You can now define configurable compliance, meaning developers can set thresholds, they can set rules, they can say attestations from here. And this type of logic is something that prior privacy blockchains could not support because they did not enable programmability in them. And this is something that I think has really resonated with regulators when it comes to ensuring compliance, because the way that Dubai's VARA treats compliance is going to be very different from the way Hong Kong's monetary authority looks at it, or Singapore's MAS looks at it, or our own SEC here is going to look at it. And so that's something that you need as a developer, the ability to switch on and switch off different rules based on the jurisdiction that you're operating in for your customers.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a huge piece of making everything work together a lot more smoothly, and also empower regulators to do a lot more. So Omar at Previdium now empowers Memento ZKchain, right, which is a compliance-focused network. co-built was Deutsche Bank and incubated by Howard just mentioned MAS, right? MAS Project Guardian. How did working alongside the MAS, the Monetary Authority of Singapore, and Deutsche Bank help shape all the safeguards that are embedded in Previdium for compliance?
Yeah, so I mean, luckily, I think most of the business team, along with myself, come from backgrounds related to regulatory transformation. I come previously from EY, where I was heavily involved in a lot of regulatory transformation here in New York related to Dodd-Frank, CCAR, Basel, etc. So the first thing when you have a new piece of technology that's coming, that's essentially a step function up, and everyone's trying to essentially understand it. So we've spent the last 2 years, we started off first actually talking to various different institutions, talking to different regulators, and actually educating them about ZK. What exactly is zero knowledge technology? How does it actually work? Why is it actually verifiable? Why can you actually trust it? Like, what are the different trust assumptions compared to a network that relies on consensus and validators? So we have been, so essentially the last 2 years has mostly been spent just going around educating people, not even pitching them on ZKsync really, but and trying to get them to build specifically, but more just building the trust in, okay, these guys actually understand what they are talking about, and getting them comfortable with ZK as, okay, I can trust the proof that this is emitting, that whatever my counterparty or the others or this transaction is doing is fully valid. So it's a very big like knowledge transfer exercise initially. From there, once they have built comfort, then they start talking about the regular types of compliance regulations that they have, things such as AML, KYC. How does that work? And luckily, a lot of the existing compliance, et cetera, is mostly just built at the application layer, right? If you are able to fully control the underlying layer 2, you control who can see data, who can see transactions, and you control who can actually transact. From there, it's just a matter of implementing your rules either at the server level or at the smart contract and application level. And so Previdiums are pretty flexible in, you can implement any type of compliance or regulatory apparatus that you want. The main thing is that you are just, you're essentially enabling the zero knowledge proofs to create the trust in the system. So I would say it's a multi-year process, and luckily, even now, even places like the SEC is also talking about zero knowledge proofs as well in their statement. So I think the industry is starting to get very comfortable. Regulators are starting to understand it, and as Rob and Howard are espousing, you will start to see ZK essentially be applied everywhere.
Yep, and also, I mean, for it to be, it's used as a proof, right, and really have it used as evidence in, for example, in financial disputes or, right, like what type of standards are required for those to really be able to be used? If you take the perspective of a regulator, maybe Rob, how is zkVerify working towards the standards?
So I will say, I think the opportunity here and probably what really needs to happen, and I think both of the other projects on this call are already doing it, is we need to work with regulators. So this is that really interesting. Instead of us, like years ago, we were sort of kind of guessing what does compliance mean, and compliance really does have a spectrum associated with it. Compliance matters to the regulator, that's the responsible authority for whatever you're trying to do, right? I think we have this opportunity now, in particular in the U.S., under just the current kind of political and regulatory environment, where regulators are absolutely now signaling. I think even the White House a couple of weeks ago issued a document that identified zero knowledge technology as sort of national interest. So I think we really need to work at a granular level where one, like, what are the requirements of regulators? What do they really need to see in these platforms? And integrate that in. I think, both of my colleague projects on this call are literally doing that. Like, they're already baking in kind of the foundational technology so that we can get a little bit more granular. But then it's a matter of actually inviting regulators in, where literally, okay, give us your asymmetric crypto key so that you can literally have access to this. And then getting those keys from regulators and getting them actively involved in the platforms, I think is an important next step. I will say, from the point of view of where Bitcoin came from and the cypherpunk world, right, that we probably all know and love, this does seem like a big break from the kind of roots of the industry. But I think this is that next massive leap forward for us, where it's really about configurable, compliant privacy, so that privacy can get out there, not just to the masses at the retail level, but TradFi is not coming on chain without configurable privacy, so that what they're doing is actually secure. Remember, another kind of complement of privacy is security, and there's no way we're going to get real assets on public infrastructure without the highest level of security possible. But of course, we also live in the world where we have to be responsible to the regulators and the jurisdictions in which we operate.
I would just very quickly add, I would echo everything Rob just said, and I would also just add one additional point, which is that there are really good crypto advocacy groups that are out there also trying to help push this exact education to policymakers. For example, there's Blockchain Association, there's Coin Center, there's ISAC. There's a lot of good groups that are out there who are also trying to help educate and inform the general public, as well as policy makers and decision makers, on this exact topic, because especially in light of where Tornado Cash has been in the limelight recently and has, in a sense, almost vilified the technology. I think there's a huge other side to the story that isn't being told, which is that ZK is a great enabler for compliance. And I think that this is one of the great opportunities for us to now start to highlight what you can do with the technology.
1,000%.
Yep. Can I just throw out there one kind of obvious point, obvious to probably all of us here, is the way compliance works in TradFi, where you have kind of auditors that are going through, physical documents in some cases, if not databases. With cryptography, you can literally automate that in real time. So there's regulators, this is orders of magnitude, better opportunity for regulators to literally be in the loop as transactions are happening, waiting, for a quarterly, auditor's report on something completely different. And you're not filing SARS reports, on a daily basis. You literally have by transaction exactly what's happening.
Yep, it's trust automation.
Amen.
Yep. And so let's do a few sets of quick quick fire rounds on some of the things. So first one is, so what are the headwinds, right? What are the obstacles that must be overcome to allow for all this to happen? Is it? Yeah, go for it.
Like to Howard's point, misconceptions, number one, right? Like don't let tornado cash give you the wrong idea of what's going on in the industry. And then the second one I'll throw out there is regulators will have to be part of the process. They need to do something about it today. They need to actually go and generate an asymmetric crypto key, right? And participate on, in these networks. And that takes work. It takes effort. It takes education, right? And all of these are just natural frictions.
Yeah, I would also add, in addition, that there is a lot of misconceptions even within the crypto community itself. When you go on crypto Twitter, privacy is painted as this black or white, all or nothing option. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's a huge misnomer that was kind of inspired by the original conception of privacy coins, where it was all or nothing back then. But over the past decade, the technology has evolved significantly from where it started. And now you have privacy as a spectrum, and more so that different use cases demand different levels of privacy. A perfect example of something that needs partial privacy is, for example, in governance. If you're having an election, you want to hide how you voted individually, but you want to be able to aggregate all the votes and tally up and publicly reveal how much option A versus option B won. And that's something that is very, very important in the user journey. Sometimes you want to make donations that are fully public. Other times you want to maybe reveal just the amount you donate, but not who you are. And other times you want to make a full blind donation, an anonymous contribution, right? And so there are these user journeys where people want different levels of privacy. And I really believe that the crypto market has underserved this exact user journey. So that's something that I really think, as a misconception, we could really help to dispel, is that it's not a black or white. Monero loves to go out there, the community loves to go out there and say how Zcash is mostly public and not private. I'm like, well, that's not exactly how you should frame it. It's more like every single application has their own level of requirements, and it's more so that these are platforms enabling you to define privacy for the first time in a configurable way now.
I would say so the technology is there. The technology is very good from the infrastructure standpoint, but to really take it into hyperscale growth, though, we need to actually come up with standards. By standards, I mean essentially trade standards, tokenization standards, asset standards, identity and KYC standards as well. That is still completely missing, and that is really holding back, I think, a lot of institutions from actually being able to fully use blockchains at the moment. Right now, you're seeing a lot of institutions kind of tokenize assets, etc., but they're mostly looking at it from a distribution, expanding their distribution of existing portfolio funds, which is completely fine. But if you really want enterprise institutions to start onboarding and actually changing their backend infrastructure, changing how they do, let's say, interbank transactions, actually coming on chain in a more open way, we do need to have, as an industry, some sort of standards that are getting set. And I think that's probably one of the hardest things to build, because it's a legitimate human coordination problem and not really a technology problem anymore.
Yeah, and if we look at the upsides, right, what type of sector do you expect to gain most from this and benefit most from the advancement that we can get to in ZK proofs and on-chain privacy? Is it DEXs? Is it DePIN, digital identity applications? What is it? Gambling? What is it?
I think.
Please. No, please.
Yeah. Okay, I was gonna say I think there's gonna be multiple waves of unlocks, but I think one of the most prominent unlocks that's coming right now is this ability to use ZK to enable far better identity solutions. And right now it's very topical because in the UK you have age verification being rolled out all throughout the country. In the US, we see many states starting to roll this out as well. Identity checks are just starting to happen more and more on the web. And one of my major concerns is, one, we don't know where this data is going, and two, there's no way to revoke that data, and three, inevitably this data is going to create honeypots that will get breached from database attacks and from hackers, and there's no way to really get recourse on this. And so I really think that the average person on the internet is not thinking so hard about this, but it's kind of like it's kind of like a pot boiling a frog slowly. And ultimately, I really believe that ZK has a huge opportunity to enable compliance without revealing all of this information. Like, I can prove to you that I'm a US citizen over the age of 18 and an accredited investor if I wanted to. And I can use that to go access certain platforms that someone who isn't an accredited US investor could not access, right? And this is technology that is now available today. And it's certainly very new innovations, but the tech is here, and the law and regulation is back here. And there's this massive gap between it, this disconnect that we basically need to push forward on.
I would add, identity is definitely a very big one, especially if we can solve that at a large scale. I think that would probably have the biggest quality of life upgrade for literally everyone, because I mean, just look at your phone, right? How many spam calls do you get every single day? How many spam texts are you getting? That's an identity leakage problem statement. And if you didn't have to leak your identity or share your identity every time let's say you were buying something online, we probably wouldn't be in this world where our phones are completely unusable for calling anyone at this point. I'd say the other one that's probably going to be obviously hot right now and probably has the most attention is going to be around DeFi. I think DeFi will be significantly turbocharged if you're able to actually hide what your transactions are, what your balances are. There's a lot of funds that just are sophisticated institutional funds that just will not move into a public ledger system at all. And if you were to solve that problem statement, you could easily see DeFi, TVL, and activity 10 to 100x compared to what it is right now.
Fascinating. Yeah. And Rob, did you want to also add something?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, like, I completely agree. It's kind of like the low-hanging fruit of the next unlocks, for sure, are around identity, because, like, at the end of the day, we're just trying to reduce frictions for people in the digital world. And there's no reason to have to replicate everything you're doing for every platform, right? To have credentials that can travel with you, regardless of what platform you're on, and be privacy preserving out of necessity, because not every platform has the same disclosure necessities, right? I don't need to, just the simplistic examples, I don't need to show the bartender my home address in order to prove that I'm over 21 to enter the bar. The same thing holds for sure true on all of these DeFi applications. I do think DeFi to me is kind of near and dear to my heart, because I've seen the evolution of it so far, in kind of our little like industry segment. And I think DeFi will bleed into TradFi soon. And I think privacy is that element. So privacy from the perspective of institutions needs to get on chain. And why might they want to get on chain? Again, because about reducing frictions. There's really no reason why in the modern world markets must close at 4:30 p.m. And not open on Friday, not open until Monday. Like, that just doesn't have to happen in today's infrastructure, at least the infrastructure that we work on. And I think that, that will go away, and it will go away because of the work that, people on this call and our teams are working on. But it's about the kind of the standards and the frictions ultimately, from like the ID to, the kind of the identification credentials that will flow with us is sort of our asset that we will be in charge of, disclosing what we want onto what platform. Now, I again, like from Horizon Labs, actually, our history was we launched the third privacy coin in the market, right? So it's like we come from that privacy coin cypherpunk world, and I have to say the big unlock though is like integrating compliance in here, so that we can just prove, one, like you're operating, like your capital is in a liquidity pool that's not like touching, the Lazarus group in North Korea. Like, there's no OFAC, issue with, other liquidity from Iran and the liquidity pool that you as a financial institution in the US are accidentally commingling funds with. So like, these are the types of just kind of infrastructure pieces that need to fall into place, but the tech is there, right? Like, it's just not evenly distributed yet, or maybe the knowledge of it isn't evenly distributed yet. But I think this is going to happen really fast. And like, the last thing I'll say, guys, is we talk about ZK is in the names of our products and companies. ZK is just cryptography, and cryptography is a technology to reduce these frictions so that we can actually just automate things and like bring these markets together and make them way more efficient. It's coming, and pretty soon ZK, as that piece of cryptographic primitive, will be part of like almost all of these systems. Like it will be part of probably many of the other L1s. But if you're thinking about like, how to wrap your mind about what's coming next, do pay attention to the the L1s that are out there that specialize in this, right? Or the L2s that are out there that specialize in this, because they are way ahead, and there's going to be a catch up that has to happen for the rest of Web3 to get to where these guys already are. Like I say that as a sort of infrastructure agnostic product like zkVerify. Like we're just trying to enable the types of things that these guys are bringing out there, but they're way ahead of the rest of the market. And I think that pay attention to what they're doing if you want to see where the market's going.
Yep, and so in terms of where the market is going, let's look at each of your projects and tell us a bit more about where it's going. Any type of new or exciting development that we can look forward to in the coming year.
Well, I would say personally, I expect Rob to rebrand zkVerify to Verify based on his earlier comments, but I would say more broadly for Aleo, I would say there's 3 areas we've been very focused on, and this aligns with a lot of the announcements we've been making. Expect to see more partnerships and integrations with financial institutions, with stable coins, and also with bridges. These are some of the key areas we see as kind of fodder to creating a healthy L1 ecosystem for developers and for builders here. And so I'd say that's probably the key insight and key area to focus on for us.
Cool. And for us, I think we've got kind of like a barbell activation going at this point. Where on one side, we're going to be working more and more with institutions to onboard them to their own Prividiums, connecting that through interop. So you can start doing use cases such as intraday repo, cross-border, and DVP. So I think we'll make quite a lot of big strides there in terms of adoption of the Prividium plus private interop over the next 6 months. On the other end, we're also going to be further building out our more permissionless DeFi tokenization aspect. We already have about a little over $2 billion in tokenized assets on chain on one of our chains, Era, but we plan to significantly ramp that up and start creating new interesting yield generating sources for various different parties and funds to start interacting with.
I mean, for us, beyond the rebrand from zkVerify to Verify that Howard very graciously suggested, which joking, we're rebranding the website though, so that's step one. We're launching, right, guys? So we've been like, our approach is we view ourselves as a sort of fundamental cross-sectional bet on this type of cryptography being important in the world, not just in Web3. So we've been taking a very methodical go-to-market approach for the product. We are within, a couple of months of launching, and when I would say on the lower end of what 1 to 2 months might look like. So that's going to be exciting because we finally hit kind of our customer goals and kind of the network flows and everything that we think justified this as an important addition to, the tools that are out there and the ecosystems of Web3. So that's going to happen soon. Pretty pumped for it. The Relayer product, again, will be branded something better than Relayer product. Actually, the team hasn't shared with me yet the names that they're going after, but we're just clearing that through legal. So we're going to have, I think, probably hands down the easiest way to interact with ZK in not just crypto, but or Web3, not just Web3, but also like the rest of the world. Any digital product that wants to use this type of cryptography, we will have the easiest way to interface with it. So we're really excited about that, because then we will be a sort of portal into other pieces of infrastructure that are out there, like what these guys are building. Because for us, it's just about like getting ZK or this cryptography out there into the world and generating those volumes and getting those flows into the important piece of infrastructure that really smart people are building. So I'm pretty pumped for that.
Awesome. Well, we're running a little bit out of time, but we'll have just a right enough time for a quick round of any final words, any predictions you want to make, and where can people find you?
Well, you can find Aleo at aleo.org. And for those who are developers or interested in seeing the build ecosystem, check out our programming language called Leo. You can go to play.leo-lang.org, which is a playground that has many different example templates of privacy preserving applications right there ready for you to use, nothing to install, purely in the browser.
And then for us, you can find our website, zksync.io. You can follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn as well. On Twitter, we're at ZKsync. And I myself am on Twitter as well, at OZHAR, Ozar.
The most important thing, zkverify.io. That's where you find kind of all of the community channels, the info, the docs, and everything like that. I will say one of the coolest things that we're doing recently, though, is we have this like crazy fun vibe coding stuff going on in our ecosystem, because it's just so easy to use zkVerify. And we have, business manager and like different people in our company, and just so many community members that are literally just building these games pretty quickly. They use zkVerify, and they're fun, right? And I think it's kind of a completely new world, and the projects that will be successful here are those that just make it easy for people to participate.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for all your knowledge and all the painting such an exciting future ahead. That we're gonna wrap up for today. But thank you for everybody who watched us live, and those who are gonna watch the recording. Thank you so much, Omar, Rob, Howard, for being here today, and have a great rest of your day, and see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sacha.
Thank you.